Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Away, Season 1, Episode 1. It is called Go. So we'll start spoiler free because it is an Episode 1. It is a new show. This is Netflix new series about the first mission to Mars, set in the not too distant future. I don't know, was there a date at any point in this?
I don't recall an actual
yeah, I don't
date,
think so.
no.
Maybe that's something they'll specify later, or they'll maybe want to keep it intentionally vague for just sort of near future feeling.
It makes it a little bit more timeless, I guess, if you don't date it.
Yeah. That said, though, if let's say in 50 years we actually start to go into Mars, all the smartphones and tech in this are probably going to age quite poorly. But
Yeah, I mean, there are other ways of dating it, don't be wrong, but less explicitly than, I don't know, something like Blade Runner.
yeah, so we'll get into it. The premise is really quite simple. Hilary Swank plays the lead astronaut on I think it's a 5-person mission to Mars, launching from the moon. This first episode revolves largely around the launch from the moon, and kind of some doubt about who's going to go, and sort of her personal life and the choices about going in the first place. There's a lot of flashbacks to sort of before she even left Earth, that kind of stuff. So that's basically the first episode. We'll keep most of the obviously the story beats for spoilers, which we'll warn you about a little bit later. So I don't know about you, but this is one of the most 5 out of 10 things I've seen in quite some time.
Oh, I liked it a lot more than you did. Which is weird. Usually it's the other way around.
I thought this was a series of tropes that I have seen done better in other things. I think what hurts it as well is that we watched a pilot for a show called First Man, I think it was called,
Yes.
starring Sean Penn. It was a Hulu show. We never actually watched any more than the first episode because we didn't have time. There was a lot of shows on
Was it First Man or was it The First?
The first, I remember the first.
Because First Man's the movie.
Yeah, but that was also about going to Mars, and
Yeah.
that had a lot more directorial flair and like atmosphere about it. This, it kind of felt like they'd watched a couple of different movies. There's definitely a little bit of sunshine in here. There's a little bit of a few other things, and I just every dramatic beat it tried to play, I found myself just seeing the soap opera of it. I just found myself seeing it's something I refer to it as seeing the Matrix Code as I'm watching something, where I can just see the mechanisms moving to make the thing function, and not in a good way, because I don't get engrossed in the story. I'm just seeing the beats play out. There's some big dramatic choices that need to be made by the end of this episode, and like, you know what the choice is going to be, because otherwise the premise of the show is going to not happen.
Of course, yeah.
So
I definitely don't disagree with that point there, that the key choice of the episode doesn't feel like much of a choice because of, I mean, if this was episode 7, sure, but it's not. So I agree with that. I think for me, I found the characters reasonably engaging, and I think that overcame a lot of the cliche elements, I would say, because there definitely are, and even, I'm not saying these characters are like 100% original. Like, I've not seen these things done before, because I have, but I found them engaging enough to watch, and that focusing on through that as the character interactions rather than about the big choice. The small drama worked better for me than the big drama, is I guess what I'm saying.
See, I don't want to be like scathingly negative here, because when I say this is a 5 out of 10, I really mean that. I mean everything about this is a 5 out of 10.
If you dare suggest the music is a 5 out of 10, we are having words.
The music's okay, but the music, again, it feels very derivative of other sci-fi stuff, specifically other astronaut style stuff.
At points, yeah.
It's going for that ethereal. We're looking at, because this show literally starts with her on the moon looking at Earth as music plays, this ethereal sort of atmosphere, and yeah, that's in my wheelhouse. I love this kind of stuff, but I've seen it done better, in multiple ways by multiple movies and TV. Well, maybe not TV shows, but definitely movies.
Yeah.
And there was nothing original about this to make me go, this is something that I would be into. I felt thoroughly unengaged by all of it. I thought the family drama, because the pacing, the structure of this episode is really weird, because the first like third to a half of it is mostly flashbacks to before they left Earth, right?
It's about 2 weeks ago, I think they said.
Yeah. And then it kind of shifts to essentially the present day where they're on the moon, but it still cuts to Earth a lot for the other characters who are still there, and it kind of feels like, I don't know, like nothing's changed almost, despite the fact that I don't know.
I mean, not much should have changed on Earth in this regard. It's only been a couple of weeks.
That's not what I mean. You're taking my meaning there wrong. I mean that nothing feels changed in the story. It kind of just feels like, I don't know. It doesn't feel different enough. It doesn't feel like there's been a shift.
I actually, I mean, if you're referring to, do you mean both time periods or just the Earth side of things?
Just the Earth side of things, I guess.
Okay. In that case, I don't think for me that this is a problem. I think I like this in the sense that it's going to be a gradual change of the. Okay, it's a 3-year mission. We know that. And it's only been 2 weeks, and we know she's been on launches and been into space before, presumably space station, maybe the moon, who knows? I don't think they give us exact details, but she's been off before, so this isn't like an unusual occurrence yet for the people on Earth.
And that's not even really what I mean, though. I'm talking more about just from a pacing point of view in the episode. It feels like we suddenly move out of flashback time into present day time without there even being kind of a signifier of anything that kind of takes us into it. It was kind of a moment where it was, oh, I guess we're just in present day the whole time now. It's like if you were going to do this, why not just start it and tell it linear? Just go in order instead of giving us the little. It was almost like the first third of the episode had a wraparound segment to set up just to have the flashback in it, and then it moved forward after that. And I thought that was just kind of weird. Like just tell it in order then. Look, I don't know.
I get where you're coming from. That could have worked perfectly fine. I'm trying to think if there is any particular reason. We start obviously on the moon on this day, and we know from the start of the episode, so this isn't a spoiler, that something went wrong yesterday, like the day before. Some incident has happened, and obviously they're all okay. We see that they're all walking around, and then we're flashing back. I guess they just wanted to have that mystery of what happened in our heads for a little bit longer. I'm not saying this is actually a great reason. Honestly, I'm not saying that this is the right choice that they've made. So
this is the thing. So even the time they get back to this, I forgot there was an incident. See, when they brought up again after all the flashbacks, I was like, oh yeah, there was an incident. Like I wasn't thinking about it. It completely left my mind because it was such a. Like she has
it was still in my head, I'll say.
Nah, she has a couple of quick flashes at the start, and that's kind of it. And the problem is that I actually do think revolving the first episode around an incident where they're all kind of questioning if she's fit to be the leader is actually a good idea for your first episode in the story. I just don't think I want any of the Earth stuff. I could be doing without all of it. Her Blandy McBlanderson husband, every scene with him I didn't like. I was bored to tears every time he was on screen.
I wouldn't say I'd go that far. I agree he is quite bland. But I have quite a stronger reaction against
everything
him as you do.
With her and dealing with her family, and like I'm missing my daughter. My daughter's worried I might die. Like we've done this. Like I'm not saying this can't be compelling because it can be, but there has to be something more to it. This felt like it felt like someone who's a fan of a bunch of sci-fi movies that I also think are good, and then mixed with like a Lifetime movie version of that.
Do you know what I think is actually a very important thing to point out here?
Yes.
If you go onto Netflix and you click on Away, and it gives you the tags of what it does, right?
Yes.
Romantic is one of the earliest tags. So I think that's very much intentional, this here. This isn't like necessarily them not knowing what they're doing. I'm just, maybe that element of it is not you're not the audience almost. It's like you should be the audience for most of the sci-fi stuff.
I disagree with this. There's nothing about the idea itself that can't work. That if you split it between the family she's left behind, because the show's called Away, so presumably the whole point of it is that it's going to be exploring the idea that this family split apart.
Yeah.
In the most extreme way anyone could be split apart, the furthest that anyone's ever went. So no one's ever been further apart than she is with her family in human history. And that as a concept's fine. I just don't think any of the actual human drama stuff is compelling. It's just, it feels so by the numbers. Like, everything about this show is so cookie cutter. Everything about the space stuff is cookie cutter. Everything about the family drama is cookie cutter, and none of it's done super poorly. There's nothing about it that's laughably bad. It's just mind-numbingly mediocre, through and through. 5 out of 10.
I'm not like. See, I feel like I'm coming across really positive. I think for me, it's like it's a 6.5 or a 7. It's pretty good. Like, it's not. I'm not like, oh, this is amazing. I agree. There's a lot of derivative elements and cliche things. I think ultimately what it boils down to is a lot of the interpersonal character drama that you just found bland. I quite enjoyed. Not all of it, and absolutely not all of it. Especially, the husband, I think, is the absolute weakest link of the show.
And I think the sad part is that the mystery, that sort of like the incident, and it kind of calls into question that some of the crew don't think she's suitable to lead. That felt undercooked to me, where I can see like a whole episode built around this drama, and instead, because it's relegated to maybe, I don't know, a third of the screen time, maybe a bit more than that, depending how you split it up.
A little bit more, but not too much.
Because it's relegated to that kind of portion of it, it doesn't really feel like it's got a satisfying kind of arc and resolution to me. It kind of, it's kind of just, it's there for the mystery's sake, and then it's there for kind of, I don't know, adding this drama into her making her choice later in the episode.
I think I disagree with some of that statement.
Sure.
For me, I think it did have a reasonably compelling arc and resolution. And the resolution was actually particularly interesting to me in that it wasn't actually that much of a resolution in some regards. Which we'll get into in the spoiler section. I'll kind of defend that point a bit more thoroughly. But I actually quite liked what I did with this stuff. Although I agree, I would have liked more of it.
Yeah, I think the focus. I mean, ultimately, conceptually, I have no problem with either of the things this episode tries to do. I think mixing them together into the one episode was probably a terrible idea, where both of them feel like, I don't know, they're both lacking any kind of weight or spark to them to really kind of, because they're both ideas that, again, I've seen in other sci-fi movies, the idea of missing your loved ones. I've seen in other sci-fi movies, like, you're on the ship, you've got this tight-knit crew, and there's tension because they don't necessarily think the captain's fit to lead anymore. I mean, that's not even, like, I've seen that once or twice. I've seen that done in so many spaceship and, like, even submarine movies at this point.
I was going to say, actual ships.
Yeah, like, that's such it's a common thing.
Yeah.
But it's not doing anything with it to actually... If anything, it feels like it's going through the motions, but it's not actually even giving it enough that most things usually give it. It's kind of like giving it the bullet points of the motions, not the full motions.
I think I disagree again a little bit, because it's not finished with this plot by the end of the episode. It's not like wrapped up like, oh, everything's hunky-dory. It's an ongoing thing. So for me, that leaves it... I'm not saying it's necessarily better. I'm just saying it's not like they haven't done anything with it. Maybe some of the most interesting stuff from this is still yet to come, potentially.
Yeah, I don't need the actual like conflict to be resolved by the end of the episode, because clearly that's going to be like you say, an ongoing thing with the characters on the show. It's just more that everything they actually do to create the conflict in this episode feels undercooked in and of itself. The actual mystery and questioning each person who was like a witness to the event, and
they do a kind of Rashomon style sequencing.
Yeah, but again, it feels like super, like, just some bullet points, because
it's very brief. Yeah,
we're not interested in actually kind of trying to build anything out of this as a story on its own, right? Which is maybe where it could really sell the idea that the trust is breaking down and that maybe she's not fit to lead this team. So it's I don't know. I think there was a moment.
Me, some of that worked a little bit better just in the trust elements, because it was kind of set up in a more interesting way. I think for me, back in the flashbacks on Earth, we got one scene of the astronauts all together doing like a press conference, and some of the questions kind of prodded at things, and they all kind of shrugged it off publicly. But I like the idea that there actually is a mistrust. It was just this public front there, that they were kind of putting on. I kind of like that.
Yeah, but that was one of the scenes though where I really started to compare it to the first, because there's a scene in the first where there's it's like a hearing rather than a press conference, but they're asked to justify why they're spending all this money and going to Mars, and Sean Penn gives this speech about the planet is not in the greatest shape. We needed the possibility of a new home someday to colonize, and it was this great speech about why it's important, why discovery, why exploration is important. And if not that, maybe there's valuable minerals, maybe there's stuff we can take, maybe there's something that can actually help our life on Earth. Like there's reasons to want to look out further for more things. And here, when that very question, why
we have a very B- answer.
Yeah, why are you spending this money on this? Hilary Swank gives this answer that's just kind of, it just feels so diminished compared to that one that Sean Penn gave in that show.
I feel a little bit bad for the writers in this sense, because I think they tried, and more to the point, I think they know that scene in the first exists and had to try to give it different reasoning, and ultimately ended up with a weaker argument because of it, because they didn't want it to be just the same argument derivative.
Do you know what I think part of the problem is with the comparison between them, and why I started thinking about that show very early on in this, especially around this scene, is that first episode of that show was entirely set on Earth, and I think the implication I got from that show is that maybe most of the season, if not the whole season, I think that season may have ended with them launching.
I think it was about building up to the launch, wasn't it?
But somehow that first episode had that ethereal quality, that ethereal tone of like, we're doing something transcendent the entire time, and it was all told through the music, the editing, the cinematography. All of it was built to give you this feeling. Whereas this, like, there was a couple of moments where she's looking at Earth, or she's looking at the window or whatever, and it's trying to do that kind of moment. But for the most part, it kind of just became a very typical, shot to shot drama. Yeah, it wasn't doing any of that. And maybe it doesn't want to be that, and that's fine, I guess.
Yeah. And I wonder if this show differentiates itself more as it goes on through the season, because we are spending more time in space and doing problem solving in space with the specific crunch elements that brings to it, as opposed to the first, where, like I say, it was all the pre-launch stuff. It was all building up to that, so the problems were in a more controlled environment, for example. So I wonder if the further the show goes on, it does separate itself a little bit more from that, and it's maybe this first episode that feels the most similar.
Yeah, maybe. And I'm not even sure if they even are aware of the first. It's not like it was about a huge hit. It was, it was what one season thing on Hulu. And Hulu originals, all in The Handmaid's Tale, don't exactly get a lot of press. So I'm not even sure if it was a factor.
I'm assuming that the people involved in this were at least aware of the competition, so to speak. They're in the zeitgeist, in the bubble of what's. That is arguably probably one of the biggest pieces of competition to them as a product, right? In terms of just direct comparison, one-to-one show in premise. Yeah, I think probably the closest in the last few years.
I think competition is a weird word to use, because it's been and gone and didn't go any further. And
right, but I wonder if when they were making this, they didn't, maybe the first that hadn't been cancelled or whatever. I'm assuming it got cancelled, or if it was just a one-season thing. I don't actually know. I don't recall.
That was at least 2 years ago now, so I don't know. But
yeah, I don't know. But maybe when they were in the production stages, when they were writing this, that was in their mind that, okay, that's there. We don't want to be, that's kind of potentially the competition for when we release this. I don't know. I don't know what the situation was.
Yeah, there's actually one element that we'll get to in a minute in spoilers that I thought was laughably bad. So we'll talk about that.
I'll be interested to see what that is, because. Yeah, like I said, I don't think this is like amazing. I think it's actually quite funny that yesterday we reviewed Raised by Wolves, which is a new sci-fi show from HBO Max. And I'm not saying they're even really comparable shows. They're very different styles of shows, sci-fi, everything. But more just, I found most of that very dull. And you kind of like, it's all right. And I kind of feel like we've completely switched roles here.
If we're comparing these two shows, I think Raised by Wolves at least feels like it's trying to say something. Whether or not it succeeds is another question. I I don't have a clue if this is actually trying to say anything. Like,
I think just if we're comparing the two, which I guess we're only really doing because they're launching, right next to each other. Otherwise, we wouldn't be.
yeah, the premises aren't even remotely similar.
No, we're just doing it. It's a sci-fi show a day apart from rival services. I think Raised by Wolves has stronger direction and has more style. Absolutely. I think I would rather watch away. If I had to, if you gave me both seasons, sat me down and go, right, okay, you got to watch one of them through to the end of the season, episode 10 or whatever it is, 8 or 10, I don't know how many this is.
I was painfully bored during this. I have no interest in watching another minute of it.
This is how I felt about Raised by Wolves, where I was bored. It was dull. And every so often there'd be something. But here I'm like, I could watch more. I mean, I don't need to. I mean, I don't know if I will watch more now that we're not reviewing any more of it, but I could. I like, and I think that's kind of how you felt about Raised by Wolves.
All right, full spoilers then from this point on for episode 1 of Away. So the husband has a stroke when she's on the moon, right, getting ready to leave. And even as the stroke itself happened, I thought, okay, like there's probably something interesting to explore here, of like something medically going wrong with him while she's away. But it happens before the point of no return, right? It happens before she's launched, and it's added into all this. Right now, there's even an argument in NASA about like should we replace her because there's some tensions about whether or not she can lead or not, blah blah. And it brings in this question of like, should she go? Should she? She may even make the choice not to go now because hey, if her husband dies, does she want her daughter to be alone for 3 years? Or I think it was 3 or 4 years the trip was going to be, and that's. Whatever. I think happening after the point of no return is maybe more interesting to me. As it was, it felt kind of this like weird, like, oh, the drama's not working. We have to add some big, huge element into it to make it more dramatic.
I actually completely agree because I thought everything up to this point, the drama was working, and it felt like a lack of confidence. I agree in that. They needed her to have a reason to decide to maybe go back. I think just having everyone else having faith or not in her and whether or not to replace her was more interesting. And like I say, I think doing it when it was past the point of no return would have been interesting to see how she handles it then.
I think the more interesting for her character would have been forget all this stuff with her family. Her possibly deciding or considering to make the choice to step down just because she's shaking about her own belief in her own ability would be far more interesting and actually do a lot more for the character of her as a captain, that she is questioning her own abilities would be more beneficial to the character but also to the tension in the show going forward. I think giving her this extra personal reason that's separate from all this actually doesn't do anything for her ability as a captain, other than gives her some extra third thing that might actually be, taking her mind away from the task at hand and make her distracted.
I actually agree with this entirely. This is I think probably the biggest point I do definitely agree on is the weakest element of the episode,
which leads to the laughably bad element.
Well, just on one thing on that last point, you said, they should do something with her not having faith in herself, and they do try. That's what's actually quite frustrating is they introduce this element during her interview scene that she tried to stop the fire and actually made it worse, right? And the psychologist kind of has to talk her into just, well, no, you tried to do the right thing. You're making the right decisions, even if this one went wrong. You have the right mindset. But I think that's what's frustrating is they actually have all the correct beats there to do the better drama of this. They've already got it in the episode. They just needed to expand on it.
Yeah. Her character's pretty bland. Her character's kind of like just plain white bread. Let's be honest.
She is, and which is where this is gonna sound weird. Is I like how everyone else plays off of her. I like that she's the blank slate, and I like seeing the things bouncing around her. I don't actually like her necessarily.
Yeah, I wasn't super into her character. She's not as bad as a husband, but I wasn't super into her character. The laughably bad thing is towards the end of the episode, she's actually made the choice to go back. She's not going to go on the trip. She's going to, be back on Earth in a few days, and she's talking to her daughter over the phone, and we get the husband who's survived. He's still lying in the bed. He can't really talk yet, but he can kind of muster up a whisper, and he's talking through the ear of his daughter, who's relaying the messages to her over the phone, and he's says a few things first, and like I was sitting there going, I know what's about to happen. I know where this is going, and the daughter eventually says, "Wait, what? You want me to say that?" kind of thing, and I'm like, ah. And it's it's the husband who can't even speak, but he musters up enough energy to say one word. He's like, "Go," like, "You must go." And I practically I almost started laughing, because this was them trying to force the drama of something they hadn't earned, and this for me was all I needed to see about the quality of the writing on this show to know that I didn't want to see any more of it. Was this moment?
That's fair enough. This husband stuff. I'm lumping all of this. The point from where he falls ill to here is all the weakest element of the episode by far. This moment is really not good.
And the sad part is that if you told me that we're never going to see Earth again after this episode, I would maybe be inclined to try the next one. But I guarantee you, we're going to be having the subplot all season of like them on Earth.
Oh, we definitely are, because we introduced the two people at NASA, the other man and woman, who are kind of like the head up people.
Yes.
Kind of, one's dealing with the international side of things, and one's kind of in control of the actual mission. It seems.
Yeah, and notably, the husband, we didn't even mention this, does work at the control center, because he was trained to be an astronaut once upon a time, but because his father, I didn't even catch what the
I didn't know. I think the initials were like CMC or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't catch it, or I wasn't familiar with it, but because there's a chance he might have something, because his father has something, they'll never let him actually be an astronaut. So he works in the control center at NASA. Yeah,
and it was quite late that he learned this. Like, he was fully trained. It wasn't until after his father got it. Or his father started showing symptoms of it in his 70s, and then he got tested, and it was like, okay, it's you do have the potential for it as well.
Yeah, it's why his daughter's a baby, so it gives you maybe 13 years ago or something like that. Because the daughter's like maybe 15 or something like that just now. 14,
yeah, give or take. But I say, they're in that age, the middle age. He's well into his career at this point, but he got fully trained as an astronaut, so he knows what it's like, even if he never actually got to go into space. He does understand the risks better than some other people.
Yeah. So you kind of get the sense that they're trying to set up a whole thing where he wants her to go because he's living through his wife. He's like, no, you must do this because I dreamed of this and I know why you have to go.
They've both been working on this for years, and like I say, he's in mission control. Like, his day job is still going to be there working on this mission.
Yeah.
Once he gets out of hospital.
I mean, I think my concern would be is that somehow he's going to be back in that control room far too quickly, given the fact that he's had a stroke. He should not be in that control room for months at best.
That is very true, and I mean, given that it's a 3-year mission, it's potential. If they wanted to, the show could play with that. They could do this. Whether or not they will, and I am inclined to agree. They probably will. He'll probably be back there within 2 episodes at best, if not next episode. Honestly, I would not be surprised if next episode, and I don't know, someone else will have to tell us this that carries on, because I'm probably not going to watch anymore either. If there is a scene of him trying to come into work and the boss lady trying to send him home, be like, no, you're not ready for this.
Oh yeah, that's probably definitely going to happen. And they're even going to. I bet there's even stuff later on in the season when there's really tense stuff's happening on the ship where they're worried that he may have a stroke in the control room because he's getting tense about his wife dying.
Yeah. What would be more interesting in terms of to do with that character would be to play up the idea that obviously all of them in this building are NASA, so they inherently side with their astronaut in general over the other nationalities. Mm-hmm. But for him, it's a lot more personal, and it would be actually genuinely good and interesting to see. At some point questioning: is there some bias? Is he actively giving her the benefit of the doubt and siding with her, even when the evidence points against it? Now, obviously, that could be done in a very tropey and cliche way, but there are ways that I think you can do that would be, interesting and should be done once you've set up this relationship.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Boring stuff happened. That was just the tension, the Russian guy, the Russian astronaut, he doesn't trust her.
I like him and the Chinese one. I think they have good chemistry together, the two of them.
Yeah, they're okay. I mean, the other astronauts seem like they could be fine. Given a bit more time. There's just not enough of them this episode to really get a strong sense. I did sort of laugh a little bit though because one of them, like, I had to do a double take to see if it was Ravi from iZombie because he had the same hair and beard and everything. I was like, wait, he could be like his brother or something. He looks really like him.
That looks like him.
At a glance, he did because he had the exact same hair and beard.
I mean, sure.
He did.
No, I buy that, but I don't think he looked that much like him outside of having a similar haircut.
Well, no, once I saw him properly, but it's that sort of thing where the first thing you notice about a person is a hair and a beard, right? It kind of makes the shape of their whole head.
It does. It does.
No. Yeah, I have nothing more to add about this. It was thoroughly mediocre in every conceivable way, except that one moment that was actually just downright terrible and laughably bad.
Yeah, I came on the side that it's okay. It's not brilliant. I liked it well enough. I could watch more of this. I probably won't, but I could. But it does have moments of badness, like that particular beat.
It's a big fat meh. It's meh personified in TV form. Alright, you can let us know what you thought of the first episode of Away if you happen to watch it in the comments. You can like is really super important on YouTube. It helps us out a lot. It's a nice free and easy way to support us. You can also support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month to keep all the content coming. You can catch us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?